this is really the bazaar. I thought the circus started with the debate and
Right.
the usual, the Democratic Party corporate, the Ayatollah of the Democratic Party thought Biden was not going to make it, and they forced him out. I think he was
Right.
forced out. It's a civilian coup. It's not a military coup, but it is a
That's
coup
right.
within the
Yeah.
Democratic Party. Now all the eyes now on Kamala Harris and the dynamic, and I can't believe the excitement in the Democratic Party and people
Yeah.
who've been they just give up on politics. So we're not gonna vote. And they're not going to be part of the circus. Now they're coming back, and everybody's getting excited about Kamala Harris, and the money start pouring in, millions of dollars, $80 million one day. What is going on here? What is behind forcing Biden out, and what is about the excitement of the Democratic Party about Kamala Harris, which
Let's start with
her
a real
record.
simple question. Who is the party? And I think that's the most interesting question here
Biden.
is that Joe Biden seemed to be insisting for several weeks, even after the debate, that he gets to decide who the party is, and he gets to decide if he's going to be the nominee. But this was a battle that became really fascinating because you then started to have, what is it, members of Congress, you had public opinion, potential voters, but the critical definition of who's the party, it was the donors, it was the money. At the end of the day, I think it was, and we'll never be able to prove this, is the reason Biden finally made the decision to get out. He saw all the money being choked off at this point. And for people who say money isn't speech, this was clearly an occasion where money was speech. They shouted at him to get out. So they wanted him out because if you looked at the polls, even before the debate, he was trailing Trump in the critical swing states, and the debate only made it worse. There was always concerns about Biden's mental acuity. The debate just reinforced that. The interview with George Stephanopoulos didn't help. So the Democrats were just depressed, thinking they're going to get slaughtered in November. And so now enter Kamala Harris to save the party. And what I haven't figured out yet is if she's really the savior of the party, or just because the party was so despondent under Biden that anybody would be a better choice at this point than him. So that's where we are at this point. But I do think Harris is in an interesting position because Biden clearly was going to lose the election, in my opinion. Clearly going to lose the election. Some of the pollsters, pundits, and politicians are saying, well, Harris picks up where Biden is. I think it changes the dynamic of the race. And still not willing to say that Trump's going to lose, but it's certainly a very different race now than it was on, at noon on the 21st of July.
The question is she ready? Is qualified to
Yeah.
lead the nation in this critical time? And I think the better question is the country ready for a woman of color to be president?
If we're talking about qualifications, um, in
It's more than
yeah,
Trump.
yeah, I was gonna say, in 2016, was Trump qualified to be president?
Uh,
Um, 8 years later, I'm still not sure Trump is qualified to be president of the
but
United
but he
States.
has a cult. Democrats are not a cult.
Yeah, qualifications don't seem to be an issue anymore. But if you go by conventional wisdom, remember, she's been what? Vice president, she's been U.S. senator, attorney general, a prosecutor. I don't know. Does that make you qualified or unqualified? I have no idea whether it does. But I think your question is on the flip side is given her demographics, what does this mean? And I think it cuts both ways. Certainly the Trumpistas, they're never going to vote for her. They're never going to win her over. But for people who care about identity politics, this may matter uh, uh, in terms of bringing people over. The fact that Democrats have to win over women, including African American women, brown skin, black skin. They've got to win over young people, got to win over what is it? Yeah, young people. Well, so, women, people of color, and young people. I don't know. Right now, in the first 72 or 96 hours after her I guess anointment, you would pick it, or coronation or whatever, she's exciting people. But you're right. She's not that much different than Biden is. She's Biden without the baggage.
Action in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And it seems like here is the problem with the American politics and and those liberal sensitivity crap. Now, is it really a progress? Is it really an improvement? If the one who's going to send the bomb to kill the Palestinian is a woman of color.
Obama's a bomb is a bomb, I guess. And even though Democrats, Biden and maybe Harris, are pushing back against Netanyahu, as we speak, as we do this interview, Netanyahu's talking to Congress. At the end of the day, if Harris were to win, is the United States still going to be with Israel? Yeah, nothing's going to change. Think about the choice that we had before Harris. It was one candidate who supported Israel a lot versus another candidate who supported Israel a lot. What was the choice at that point? Now we have one candidate who supports Israel no matter what, and another one that maybe a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit of pause, but not much. But at the end of the day, are we going to continue to sell bombs to Israel? Yeah. Are we going to continue to give billions of dollars in foreign aid to Israel? Yeah. I mean, I don't think it does it matter if the bullet says Biden, Harris, or Trump?
Let's talk about her chance against Trump. Here you have a prosecutor against a felon. Wouldn't that
Yeah.
be enough, enough,
No. Well,
enough
see, this
argument
is
right there?
yeah. See, this is interesting the way you describe this because on what was it on Tuesday, July 23rd, uh, she, Vice President Harris was in Wisconsin doing a big rally, and she referred to Donald Trump as a sexual predator. Well, given the judgment against him, that's not an inaccurate description. She said, "I'm a prosecutor. I know how to deal with sexual predators." And
Really?
what's in, and what's interesting about it is that what Harris has an opportunity to do is redefine the race, because for the last number of years, Trump's record on women, his misogyny his racism too, has been well known, and it hasn't really seemed to alter the race. Is it possible that what she could do in the next 100 days is redefine Trump? I think that's what she's trying to do. I also just wonder at this point, and this is a great question here. We all know that Trump is a racist. He's misogynist. We know that he's going to lock every racist, misogynist, anti-immigrant line you can against Harris at this point. I almost wonder at this point, since we're all expecting it, is it really going to matter?
That's very interesting. Both ways might not matter.
That's right. That's right. I mean, because I still say at the end of the day, I'm going to say between 95 and 98% of the American public has made up their mind what they're going to do. We're really talking about moving an incredibly small number of people in about 5 or 6 states. As we've talked about before, this entire campaign comes down to 150,000 to 200,000 voters in 5 or 6 swing states, what they're going to do. And partly the reason why, with the exception maybe of Michigan, why both candidates can afford to ignore Palestinians in the Arab world is that for the most part, those votes might not matter to them. Michigan's the one example. Michigan's the one place, a critical swing state, where there is a sufficiently large number of
Arabs.
Palestinian Arab voters, where if they decide they're not going to vote for Trump, but if they decide to sit out the election, that could determine the election outcome.
Mm. And it happened before. I mean, it's amazing. And you wrote about the swing fair or the most important. Well, it's really, I cannot fathom, I cannot understand that all this biggest democracy in the world, or maybe India bigger, uh, and all this sophistication, experience, and elites, and think tanks, and media, free media, laws, constitution, and Supreme Court, and it comes down to 150,000, and he spent billions of dollars on this election. But everybody is lobby and all of that. So it comes down to this. Well, so what does it tell about our democracy?
Well, first off, I'll make two comments here. If I'm right, it's down to 150,000 to 200,000 voters. It'd be a lot cheaper and a lot easier on all of us if the two candidates just took those 150,000 voters out for dinner and a movie, and would save us all a lot of anguish. But your question, as a lot of people ask, presupposes something that we're a democracy, and I'm just not sure how much of a democracy we are, if at all we have been. Is that we have the greatest gap between the rich and poor, whatever in American history, among the worst of any electoral democracies in the world. We've got huge problems of racism that disenfranchise people. We have an archaic electoral college that keeps people from voting. I don't know. I'm kind of skeptical about whether or not we are a democracy. So your question is a good one, but your question or your surprise only works if we presuppose we're a democracy. If we sort of
I see.
get rid of that nasty fact and say,
Exactly. If we had one.
yeah, that we're probably some kind of oligarchy, or maybe at this point, or one of my teachers once said, we're a democracy for the few. For those few who've got money, who are white, who are Caucasian, perhaps who are Christian, we've got a wonderful democracy. For the rest of us, it's not so wonderful.
Well, somebody was saying we are supporting Israel because the only democracy in the Middle East. And until today, they still saying this
Yeah.
after all this, 100,
What
anyway,
part of
but
what part of Israel is a democracy?
exactly. Uh, and I think a Palestinian activist was saying it's democracy for the Jew and Jewish for the Palestinians.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's apartheid system.
Oh yeah. I mean it's a good question to ask if and when it was a democracy, Israel, and when did it end? But it's a great question to think about here. But clearly, it's an apartheid state. The I'm trying to think of who was it. Pick Botha, 40 years ago would be looking, who used to be the head of South Africa, would be looking fondly upon Israel now and saying, "How are they able to do it? We couldn't sustain it."
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think it's that's the irony is the one who's taken the Israelis and Netanyahu to the international court are South
Yes.
Africa. Isn't
Yeah.
that something?
Well, yeah. Well, also, one of the stories that got almost no play in the last week is the International Court of Justice issued an advisory opinion saying that Israel's occupation of Gaza violated international law and they ought to stop. I mean, I saw a little piece, I think maybe in the Washington Post. I can't even remember if it was a nanosecond, in the New York Times. But think about this now. We have had in the last 8 months two decisions by the International Court of Justice, one on genocide, one on illegal occupation, which are hugely important decisions that are getting nearly no coverage in the American mainstream media. Go back to something you were bringing up earlier on here. The division that's starting to play out right now is Silicon Valley is lining up behind Trump and Vance. Wall Street is lining up behind Biden at this point. I just find this really fascinating. If I could use the other metaphor, if I can use Elm Street to refer to like where average people live, like that,
Hmm.
the fight is between Wall Street and Silicon Valley. But Elm Street seems to have no voice in this whatsoever.
Hmm.
So it's one set of big corporate interests fighting it out with another big set of corporate interests in terms of where they're going to put their money, and in terms of whom they think is going to be best for their interests. The the rest of us don't seem to have enough money to matter, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like we got excited about Obama, and then agent of change, yes we can, Ferris, black, whatever, ended up a sellout,
Yeah,
just start a corporate political, agent, and he sided with the corporate America against consumers,
yeah. I always
disappointing in
remind,
foreign policy and all of that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
why would we expect any different from Miss Harris?
I don't think we should. I mean, when I think of go back to Obama, when I think there's a lot of mistakes that Obama made, but one of them is after the crash of '08, bailed out the banks, but let the average person and the homeowner fend for themselves. Uh, that we spent what? Who knows how many trillions of dollars bailing out corporate America in the financial sector. And instead, I don't know how many millions of people, working class people, lost their homes, lost their jobs, et cetera, like that. Uh, you're right. I mean, for all the fuzziness that people have, by wearing the rose-colored glasses and looking back at Obama, he was horrible for working class middle America, which is why I'm not surprised that working class are walking away from the Democratic Party. It's just that I don't think the Republican Party cares either about them. And so again, going back to our premise here, if we assume we're a democracy, then we've got a problem. But if we assume that it's some type of democracy for the few, where it's based upon $1, one vote, well, then it's perfectly easy to explain what's going on in American politics right now. We've got two corporate interests represented by two corporatists fighting it out for power and influence, or at least, I don't know, figureheadedness. I don't know.
It's a mafia operation. It, well, let's end this about. It's been a while now. The assassination attempt, and I mean, after assassination attempt, you mean it looks like Jesus was resurrected again,
Yeah.
and the cult of Trump were really galvanized and turned this attempt to almost a comical things.
Yeah.
It's just like make assassination boring again. I mean, this is serious. And now it's put in this band and the ears and people dancing excited about the guy because he almost got killed. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
becoming a comical.
So okay, so two things here. One there's a friend of mine who came to was it last week, and he said, "I'm going to give you a story." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, you have to know the Christian story of Jesus in the Bible. He said, the ear. That's Christ's stigmata. That's Christ's wound, like something like that. He said all the fundamental Christians will go nuts at this point because he's now this Christ figure who gets to display his wound like Jesus did supposedly after the resurrection. And so I mean, my 11th grade English teacher would be so excited right now. My 11th grade English teacher could read any book and find Christ imagery in it. So now we've got a Christ imagery for the presidency going on here at this point in terms of probably one of the most, I don't know, personally immoral people who probably ever ran for the White House. Now is incarnate as Jesus Christ or something like that. I guess that means what? I guess we have to fill in other characters. Who is his wife? Is his wife Mary, his mother, or Mary Magdalene? I don't even want to get into that kind of stuff.
Ouch.
But piece that I was working on, and it died over the weekend. I was working with somebody trying to figure out, is there, quote, an assassination bump? That is, looking at past assassination attempts here, England, and in Brazil, there appears to be maybe candidates would get like a small bump 3 to 4 to 5 points in the polls, and then it would eventually disappear rapidly. And so I was thinking, okay, so what kind of bump is Trump going to get from the attempted assassination? No one's even talking about the assassination now. That's old news.
Exactly. Well, I think the pollster and the people who advise him say maybe we need another attempt to
Yes,
post.
yes,
What do you
that's
need?
right.
What's your
That's right.
campaign needs? Another attempt.
That's right.
Uh, you know, I know a lot of the reaction to the attempt. I know it's all the news now. The people start talking about this is not American. Political violence is not American. And Obama even came out of his hiding and he said this is very un-American. And this is all the guys who master political violence all over the world.
Yeah,
You're talking about the kill list of Obama, that he killed thousands of people. He decided they are need to be killed
yeah,
without due process, violating all kind of. So what are the political violence they are talking about? They're talking about the political violence against white rich men.
yeah,
That's the only one that counts. But
yeah,
killing millions of brown people in Iraq, Afghanistan, hunting people down with drones and
yeah,
a kill list. This is not a political violence.
yeah. I was going to say, on any given day when Obama was president, how many drones, how many assassinations did he basically order? I mean, Osama bin Laden was only the most overt of all of that. But I'm going to guess, put that together during Obama's era. If I can call violence something different, the number of people deported at our southern border, I would argue that's violence too. Taking people who are seeking asylum, who somehow think that the inscription on the Statue of Liberty, give us a poor and retired, et cetera, like that, thinking it means something, and to forcibly send them back, oftentimes to certain demise. I don't know. That's a lot of violence.
And you send them back to an area, maybe their life is in jeopardy.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
violence. That's
Yeah.
even against the international law.
Yep. You're absolutely correct. I mean, and so for a country that's supposed to be standing for rule of law, I think there's like the statement is we stand for rule of law, footnote, except when it's us.
I don't know. Well, I know you have to go somewhere, but I appreciate your time. And are
A
you gonna
pleasure.
vote? Let's get personal.
I think it predates me, but I think it was when Jack Parr hosted the Tonight Show a billion years ago, his line was what? Don't vote. It only encourages them to run.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Dr. Shaw. Thank you so much, Professor of Political Science at Hamlin University. Enjoy your day and let's